So in 2022, Alan and I have decided that we are going to work our way through the entire set of ValuesJam values, and we are going to ValuesJam with each other on every single one of those. And we've been really purist about it. We have done many ValuesJams with many of our ValuesJam founder members and guests. However, being purist, we've discovered we have only done 2 values together as a pair, and those are compassion and creativity. So today we have selected at random a new card that we're going to ValuesJam out today, and you can see by the decorations behind me, we're still very early in January and we have not yet taken the Christmas decorations down in our house.
And I've shuffled the deck and I've cut it a few times, and the card that we're going to talk about today is innovation.
Ooh.
So Lisa, what does innovation mean? What does it look, feel, sound like?
Well, having spent the many formative years of my career working to support R&D in a large pharmaceutical company, this is kind of a question that we've explored quite a lot, and the difference between creativity and innovation. For me, innovation has come to mean the implementation of a new idea, and generally it can be big or small as an innovation, but it's usually the implementation of something that makes a positive difference.
And what about the metaphor piece of the question? What does it look like, feel like, sound like?
Well, what does it look like? It looks like you've done something smart, actually, and it's something that people take note of, and maybe we're getting to the sounds like piece. People might comment on it. People might be quite intrigued by it. Might talk about it. So even if you were to do something innovative in your home, let's say you reorganized the process flow of where you get your cereal, where you get your bowl, where you get your spoon from, and the family come down and go, oh, you've moved everything, but you go, oh, well, actually, that's better, like that, So it generally kind of an innovation usually kind of feel quite good for those who are on the receiving end of it. It makes things feel easier or quicker, perhaps.
And it's you mentioning the work that you've done with the large pharmaceutical company. This has happened previously for both of us in ValuesJam sessions. So you remind me of things that I've not really thought about for many, many years. So when I worked for the Mayfair Hotel, which was in the 1990s, I was responsible for innovation in that hotel. And then later, when I worked for a facilities management company, my title was Director of Strategy and Innovation.
Oh, fantastic.
But I have to say that I've got a bit of a jaundiced view of innovation, actually, in some ways, because it's bandied around, like you say, and sometimes it's made out that it has to be these big inventions. Whereas for me, innovation is simply introducing something new where you are that wasn't there before, and hopefully that makes a positive impact. But actually, that's the other part of it as well, is that I think sometimes there's too much focus on the impact And for instance, in another job, I remember we had goals for the year, which were, it was something like implement 6 new innovations, at least 2 of which are successful. And the reason we did that was because we wanted people not to feel like, oh God, if I'm not absolutely sure it's going to work, I'm not going to do it. You know, we wanted people to, oh no, I've got a delivery. I'm going to need to go and get it.
We can pause.
So this is 2 minutes later.
Yeah.
Where did we get to?
So it wasn't a delivery, Alan. I believe that your neighbours are doing something innovative, aren't they, in the garden?
Yeah, new neighbours are thankfully clearing their garden, which was a real overgrown disaster. So it's going to be a massive improvement. That's good.
Great stuff. Yeah. So yeah, before we had that little brief interruption, we were talking about how you measure innovation, actually, weren't we? And it does take me back to those days in R&D, actually. And you know, we all know that what gets measured gets done, and gets rewarded. At that time in the business, we weren't measuring or rewarding the right thing, and it actually took new leadership to come along and really switch things around, which have had a fantastic impact in that particular organization. You know, and what they're passionate about is getting medicines to patients, and they've managed to really achieve that since then. So yeah, I think you with innovation, I think that innovation for innovation's sake takes something away from it, doesn't it? And I think there are lots of people out there in the world who have, you know, wonderful ideas, who and they deserve to bring them to the world, if you like, and then we can benefit from them. But maybe they start out with a different kind of mindset. Maybe they're just driven by solving problems. I don't know, really. So.
It's something about involving people and giving them the space to be able to contribute as well. But then the organization being equipped to handle. So here's a story. So another hotel group, and the managing director decided to put in place a suggestion scheme. So everybody was told in the company that, you know, we're going to be involving every single person in the organization to contribute ideas, big and small, and this is how you do it. You know, you fill in a form, it gets sent off, blah blah blah. So I'm pretty competitive, and so I wanted our property to be seen as joining in and doing really well. So I explained to our guys that I'd love it for us to be the hotel that was seen to be contributing the most ideas. And the team really took it to heart. And about 6 weeks later, I was asked to stop sending the ideas in, because what they hadn't considered was the resource required to administer the process. And so the thing absolutely fell on its face from a corporate perspective, because everybody just became disillusioned. We turned it around because we said, okay, well, we're not going to treat this as so much as a corporate thing now. It's going to be just for our property. And what ideas have you got just for here? And it worked really, really well. But you also meant this thing about measurement as well. I sometimes think that we kind of totally overestimate our ability to predict the future and outcomes, and especially in the area of innovation, because this was a call center. So we were putting in new processes, and we were asked, you know, what sort of performance do you think you're going to be able to achieve compared to previously? And there was all this debate about, you know, could it be 5% better, 6% better? And it was actually, in the end, we persuaded the client not to have a year one target. And our brief was to the team, just see how much you can do better. And we achieved a score of something like 95% compared to 70% previously. And so it's this thing about, with innovation, why don't you just do the innovation, do it as well as you possibly can, and then measure the impact, rather than predict when you've really not got any idea about what you're basing that prediction on.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point, actually. And it kind of makes me think about something you and I have discussed quite a lot, is this concept of a holistic approach and marginal gains. Like I think we both firmly believe that lots of small changes can add up to make an overall, marked change and improvement.
Mm. Yeah.
So, it's interesting, isn't it? And as we've been speaking, I've been thinking about, and I obviously know what questions are coming next on the values jam card. And innovation. When have I experienced innovation? And I think, maybe I've been involved in developing some innovative ideas and processes and approaches. Maybe if I rack my brains, but I'm thinking about things like the Kindle. Now that is a damn good innovation. And I can see the bookshelf behind you, and I know that you like books, real books. I have a big bookshelf as well, and I adore real books. But actually, there's something just so practical about being able to take a Kindle with you and have literally hundreds of books available to you wherever you go.
Yeah.
And you and I were also speaking yesterday about how fantastic it is that if you come across a word that you don't know, you can highlight that on your Kindle and you can look it up and find out what it means. You can highlight it and send it to yourself. You can email it to yourself or to someone else. That's great innovation. That's had a real positive impact on me. Really, really fantastic, actually. So there have been some really good gadgets that have been developed probably over the last 20 years that have been really innovative and made a real difference to me and lots of people, I think.
Yeah, I think that area of technological innovation is fascinating because, like you say, there have been amazing technological advances. However, sometimes the communication around it doesn't match. And so it's possible that you've got this technological capability that you're just not aware of.
Yeah.
And so in that case, it's a waste of time, So this happened to me just like last week. It was, I was wanting to watch a Sky broadcast football match. And normally I watch it in the office on my screen. And I didn't realize that there was an app already on the TV. And so I spent all this time trying to work out whether I could mirror my phone and blah, blah, blah. And then I found out that there was an app there that you can just watch it on your big screen TV rather than mess about.
Yeah.
That might be, I might be unusually ignorant, but it's this point about unless the capability is communicated and people know about it, then the innovation can actually not be delivering as much possibility and potential as it otherwise might.
It's a very good point, and it's not just communicated, it's about education, isn't it? I mean, and yeah. As you were saying that, I kind of had to kind of giggle to myself thinking, I bet if our kids were to watch this, we could actually literally hear their eyeballs rolling in their head and be like, oh mother, oh father, oh really, why don't you just cast it and do this, that and the other, and there's an app for that, and you're like, really? But yeah, you know, we don't just need to know that it's possible, we need to know how to be able to do it as well, you
and
know.
it's not necessarily an inability, it's just lack of awareness and knowledge. So I went to a conference the end of last year, and it was the financial services sector, and they were talking about how, particularly in the banking sector, there is a strong resistance by older people to move from going into branch to doing everything online. Real strong resistance. And there was a guy there talking about how the pandemic time has actually forced people a bit more to do that. And I said to him, well, isn't that an opportunity? You know, that you've got a set of circumstances which means that there's more motivation for people to be online than to go into branch. And couldn't you provide the training to show them how easy it is actually and what the benefits are? And he hadn't been thinking like that at all. He was just thinking about, oh, well, we want them to move across and they won't. They're really stubborn. So it's really, there's something about innovation being enabled by a really open mind. And I know that's one of the things that you're really keen on, being just open.
Yeah, absolutely I am. And I mean, you kind of, you make me think, Alan, about where somebody, you know, a sector, you know, either by necessity or, you know, choice has decided that they're going to do things in a different way. With and it's really quite black and white at the expense of some of the good stuff from the past. You know, going, you know, actually, you know, going to that. Sometimes you actually need to go to the bank. You do. You actually need to go to the bank, and you actually want something physical, and you want and need to speak to a human being, because the chat bot just doesn't understand your question, or you don't have this, you know, you're just not getting where you need to. And it's a terrible phrase, isn't it? But sometimes innovation can lead people to throw the baby out with the bathwater, you know, and you know, it's a bit like physical shops. We're all shopping online, but there's something ridiculously impractical. If I'm going to a black tie ball and I want to try on an evening dress, I know that I'm going to be spending over £100 probably on an evening dress. Okay, I need to know, does it fit my size and shape? Does it suit me? And I needed to do this at the end of November, and I went to a big department store, one of the only ones remaining because all the others have folded. There were maybe 3 dresses that would pass as evening wear. Normally there would be hundreds. And I thought, oh, well, maybe they've not produced them this year because people are not going out. So I had a quick look online. Well, they're all there online. But is it practical for me to order 7 or 8 dresses at over £100 simply to try them on and then send them back? No, it isn't. So the innovation of being able to buy it online and have it delivered to my home is marvelous, but it's just not quite what I need all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need the old-fashioned bit as well.
What you're touching on here for me is that, and it's not just in the area of innovation, I think this happens more broadly, but people start out with an end in mind. Then they create the means to achieve the end, but then they fall into the trap of getting all consumed with the means, in this case, online ordering, and they forget what the end was, which is to help people choose a dress that they're really happy with and suits them.
Yeah.
And in the Values Economy book, we talk about Nordstrom actually, and how I can't remember the percentages, but they have shifted from in-store sales to online sales dramatically, but they have not become obsessed with technology. What they say is that they don't care how they deliver a brilliant customer experience, but that's what they must deliver, whether it's in person in store or whether it's online. But they don't get all caught up with, oh, look, aren't we smart because you can order online, but then forget that they're getting people to order a dress that they're pleased with, that fits them.
Yeah. And I think, you know, there are people who are trying to step into this space, and one of the dresses that I tried on, it didn't fit, and I needed the bigger size, but I couldn't get it from that supplier. I had to get it from somewhere else, and you know, they stepped into that space, and actually it turns out that this dress is probably, no matter what size I buy it in, the proportions of it are never going to be right for me.
Yep.
And so I still had to tie up then another probably 2 weeks of ordering something new, paying for it, trying it on, sending it back, and then waiting for the, you know, for the money to be refunded before I can then think about, okay, I'll need to buy another one. So customer experience, and it is really important, because actually it makes me think, well, it's not really a good idea for me to do that, is it?
Yeah.
Next time doesn't work for me.
Is that what you mentioned just now, didn't you? You said innovation for the sake of it is just a waste of time.
Yeah. So innovation can be really positive, but I think there are also things from existing ways of doing things that really need to be given attention to, you know. And I mean, we learned about a lot about that in the pharmaceutical industry, and you know, kind of patient experience and community experience about how valuable it is sometimes for people to actually physically go to a clinical setting to carry out a particular test, and it were becoming part of the way that they like to do things. It was kind of a positive experience for them. So you know, we paying really asking the user and involving them in that kind of innovation experience is important, I think.
Yeah, it's this thing. So I suppose Apple, it's kind of talked about a lot, isn't it? But probably is the very best example of how, you know, Steve Jobs used to say, you have to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. And that is absolutely it, rather than create this innovative technology thing that you don't really understand what the impact on the customer is. You know, having a real understanding, and it's not understanding just at a technical delivery level, it's understanding at that higher level. So, you know, what are your emotions when you find a dress that you like and fits? And what are you jeopardizing when you're not providing that to a potential customer? And what's the risk of you then losing that customer to somebody else? Yeah, totally with you there. The opposite side of that coin, though, we've just talked about where we have experienced innovation and some positive things and some negative. But another question on the card deck is, where have you noticed a lack of innovation?
Oh, yeah. I know there's something that has been bugging me, but it's not coming to mind just at the moment. Have you got an example that you can think of? Whilst it'll probably come to me whilst you're.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's because we've started talking about customer service and customer experience, but for me, it's like the banking industry as a whole. I don't understand the way that they feel they need to operate in such a kind of cumbersome, awkward way a lot of the time. And the same goes with other larger organizations. So I've just had an issue with Royal Mail, and it's not been Amazon easy to sort out. And it should be, because, you know, if they can do it, why can banks or organizations like Royal Mail? So that I think it's this thing about how, if we experience next day delivery from one provider. When we're dealing with another provider, we don't make allowances. We don't say, oh, well, it's because they're in a different industry, blah, blah, blah. We just say, if I can get that sort of service in one place, why can I not get it in this place? And so I think I'd love to see more challenger banks delivering more customer-friendly service. And I'd like to see bigger organizations emulating the way that Amazon deal with sorting out issues.
Well, I mean, actually think about the bank that we chose, ValuesJam.
Yeah.
It's award-winning.
Yeah.
And for a reason.
And we should name check them, really, shouldn't we?
Yeah, Starling.
Yeah.
Fantastic experience, to the extent where I think, right, well, I'll have a personal account there as well. I already had one for my, for my other business. It's great. It actually doesn't bother me that I can't go to a bank branch for them, because actually they meet my needs really well. Yeah. Whereas, and actually First Direct did that a long time ago. And that was a really, really good experience. But other banks who are still on the high street, just, almost just on the high street, I don't mean just on the high street, I mean clinging on by a thread in the high street. They're not making it easy at all. They're making the experience quite unfriendly, which I don't like. So yeah, that's a really good example.
And going back to what we were saying earlier about what innovation is, they don't have to create something jaw-droppingly new and wonderful. They just have to do what other people are already doing.
Yeah.
But it would be innovation for them.
Do you know what I think happens maybe is the fact that like your big traditional high street names, banking wise, what they tried to do was adapt their existing technology.
Yeah.
Instead of throw it out altogether and start again.
And you can understand that. I had this conversation quite recently about because the pace of change, particularly technological change, is so fast compared to what it was, it's causing a real issue. And the example we talked about was, imagine that you were with, I don't know what they were called, British Telecom, I suppose, and you were responsible for signing off the investment for all of the public telephone kiosks, right? Mm-hmm. So at that time, and I don't know even when this was, but you would be thinking, okay, I'm going to be investing a lot of money in this infrastructure, but I'm going to recoup it over a period, I don't know, decades probably. Whereas now, when you're signing off on an investment in technology, there's a risk that it's going to be redundant within a few years.
Yeah.
So it's tough for those sort of decisions to be made now.
It is, isn't it? And I'm working with clients who are implementing new technology at the moment, and the business case part of the project, phase of the project, literally on one of them, it's taken over 12 months.
Yeah.
It's taken over 12 months. And actually, they get to the end of that and they're kind of almost at approval, and actually something else has come along and like, oh,
yeah.
So, I mean, in the public sector, I guess it's a really difficult beast to turn, isn't it? It's like a freight container ship in the Suez Canal or whatever. It becomes really, really difficult. But there's one thing for sure. I don't know, innovation. Is innovation always fast? Is it slow? I don't know. I don't really know what the answer is. Maybe it's both.
Yeah, I think it can be both. But I think your point about that, that point about a business case taking 12 months, that's really kind of dangerous, because things have changed so quickly in that 12-month period.
Uh-huh.
Risk that you actually sign off on something that is no longer fit for purpose.
Uh-huh.
So for me, in innovation, I think the innovation that I've seen that is more effective is where it's fast. And if it doesn't work, then you get to know that pretty quickly, and then you move on. Rather than this laborious process trying to get it perfect and then absolutely failing. Could have been doing something else 6 months before.
Now, the other thing I've just been pondering is we're speaking about an innovation as a value. Is it something that I value? Yes, it is, when it's done with the end experience in mind, and whether I'm the innovator or the person on the receiving end of the innovation, I think. But yeah, I don't value it where it's where it's done for the sake of it. Absolutely not. And you asked me about when have I seen a lack of innovation. I think it's where I still can't find my specific example. It'll come to me when we've ended this recording, no doubt. But it's where you know that innovation is possible, and yet the organisation doggedly clings to the old ways of doing things. Actually, maybe there are some examples in one of the charitable committees that I'm involved in, actually. And when you hear that phrase, but we've always done it like this, and we've been doing it like this since whenever. You're like, yeah. Actually, some really specific examples spring to mind in there, actually. And where people are kind of like bursting at the seams, ready to innovate, but you need to capture the hearts and minds of the people that still enjoy very much the old way of doing things, with checkbooks and physical receipts and things.
Well, here's one for you. I did some work for Royal Mail a couple of years ago, and it was the first time I'd worked with them. It's a great project, actually. So it was a 31 practices project for their IT supply chain. So really, really good. But when it came to submitting an invoice, and I asked, what the process was, they said, could you mail it to this address? and so I went back saying, well, I could, but who can I email it to? We don't receive email invoices.
No.
And then I realized probably it's like part of their sales plan.
Yeah, and never mind what happens if my invoice happens to get lost in the post. Oh, we've not received it. Sorry, that's why we haven't paid you.
To be fair to them, they have changed that. They did change that while I was working with them, so it's no longer the case. But it was amusing at the time.
Yeah. Oh, you've taken me back to my early days in consulting. Actually, one of the big five, and that was the Royal Mail was a big client for us. I never worked for them, but I remember the joyful stories that my colleagues used to share over the post-work drinks, actually. So, but we can see lots of innovation that's happened with the Royal Mail, can't we? And we use some of it to our advantage.
Yeah.
With ValuesJam, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, the click and collect and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Still got room for improvement. I think here's a good example as well. We were talking earlier about when we send our ValuesJam card decks out. So I had, it was overseas envelopes that I was sending. And so I'd gone online and I'd got everything organized, put all the labels on, but then there was a queue at the post office. And so you're like, well, I've just spent all this time labeling these things up. And I was stood there in the queue thinking, I wonder how Uber or Amazon would run this. And thinking probably there would be a slot somewhere in the building that you just put your envelope, there's a scanner there that registers it, and that's it, job done.
Definitely. So that kind of self-service approach, don't get me started on self-checkouts in supermarkets.
Not a good experience or a good experience?
Depends on the supermarket. But it's notable, isn't it, that one of the most award-winning supermarkets in the UK doesn't have them at all, you know, and that they are famous for their ability to check you out quickly. Aldi.
Okay. Well, so on that, so you reminded me, when was this? Last September, I went to Mallorca for a weekend. And so I wanted to hire a car, and it was all online. And they said, you know, you collect your car keys from a safe deposit box and you get the, you know, all of this sort of stuff. And I felt really old, actually, because there was no human contact at all, end-to-end process. And it worked. It was really impressive.
Yep, I had exactly the same in Tenerife.
But I was thinking, this is fine as long as everything works.
Yeah.
But imagine that your code doesn't work, and then you haven't got your keys, and then what happens? So I was like, okay, well, I was really pleased with the way that it all worked, but I had this thing about, I wonder if they've thought through, what if it goes wrong at any stage?
Yeah, I mean, I had a very similar experience, and we used a very small owner-managed car hire firm from our local village in Tenerife, and they were brilliant. They have adapted and pivoted to suit their kind of very lean operating model. It's a husband and wife team. They've got so much vehicle stock. But we had their mobile phone numbers, and we were texting with them or WhatsApping with them all the time. And it just worked absolutely beautifully. Yep. So, you know, just a really, really great example. But, you know, sometimes do I want the innovation, the experience I want? Sometimes when I go to a supermarket, if I had wanted to work in a supermarket, I would have done. I don't necessarily want to start checking out all of my own products when I've done an 11-hour working day already. I want someone else to do it for me.
So this comes back to what we were talking about earlier, you see, because I think that in that example is a really good one, because you're not wanting no contact shopping experience. You're wanting service to be provided.
I am.
But they're not thinking about that. They're just thinking about the technical process of scanning scanning the products.
Yeah. I've refused, and I'll name check them. Lidl and Aldi, owned by two brothers.
Yeah. Different
shopping experience. In Lidl, they want you to use the self-checkouts, and I've refused. No, thank you. I don't want to. I'm going to stay here. There's a long queue. I don't care. I'm going to stay here. This is the experience that I want. And you know, similarly, going to the airport, click and drop with your bags. I'm not sure that I want to be like unsticking one of those gigantic big labels and trying to get it through the handle of my suitcase and lift it up and down. No, thank you. I don't want to do that.
Well, while we're on the Lidl and Aldi, hand up, I'm a Lidl fan. But I don't self-check out. I stand in the queue and I do that bit. But what this also touches on is I was invited to what was his name? Adrian Swinscoe, who is about, it's something like the punk CX is his thing. So it's a kind of punk version of customer experience. And he is very, you know, it's kind of, that's where the punk connection is. What he's all about is you just need to do what's right for the customer, and it doesn't really matter what people think. So Uber is a really good example where everybody was really up in arms, but actually they were giving the customer what they wanted. And people can criticize Uber because of some of the stuff that they've done, but ultimately they have changed that sector fundamentally.
Yeah.
So where was I going with this? Oh yeah. So the other issue with this technology base and self-service is, well, there's two parts to this. One is that there's no personal relationship anymore. Secondly, the competitor is just one click away. And so if the delivery falls down, there's no emotional connection for you to say, oh, I know X, Y, or Z person, and so yes, it went wrong, but I'm going to give them a bit of leeway. There's no personal relationship at all, and so you're completely free to go somewhere else. I just wonder how much people are considering that, actually.
I think it's a very, very good point. And I've noticed the difference in supermarket shopping experiences, because, the one that gets the majority of our disposable income is Tesco. But Tesco, they are innovating, and they have innovated, but they are adapting customer experience as well. And I have noticed now, since December, there are signs up on the checkout saying, here's a QR code, we'd love to get your feedback on your experience today. And I've noticed that the checkout operators have been trained to engage with you personally and start a conversation with you, like they also do at Aldi.
Yeah.
And I love that. I absolutely love that. We did another Values Jam where I had a lovely experience with a young Muslim woman who was asking me about Christmas and Christmas traditions. And we had a really nice conversation and learned something about each other, which I really enjoyed. So that does keep me going back, because I love that experience. Whereas other supermarkets, they seem to employ people to stand and gossip with their fellow colleagues whilst I am struggling with the unexpected item in the bagging area.
Yeah.
So I do not go there anymore.
Now on the ValuesJam cards, we've also got the chance to create our own question. So I'll just read it out, and then would you like to have a go?
Yeah.
Ask your own question about innovation. Who, what, where, when, why, or how?
So, Alan, if you could innovate or create an innovation in any area of your personal or working life, without kind of prejudging whether or not it's possible or how easy it would be, what would that be?
I'd like to clone myself so that I could communicate personally with as many people as I would like to, but cannot because it's just me.
I love that. I love that. Cloning. Yeah, I love that. Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, I'm on board with that. I think life is a wonderful thing, and it's like, crikey, how I'd love to do more of this, but I need to suspend time or something like, yeah. Yeah.
The serious point to it, I suppose, is about social media, because when you read a lot of social media posts that they're not the person.
Yeah.
And yet they're in the person's name, and it's like, well, and I do some of that. So I have somebody that uses what I've written, but then translates them into social media posts, which go out under my company name. But there are other people that the people doing the posts are not actually that closely connected to the people that they're supposed to be. And that that just feels a bit weird to me.
You know, you got me back on Aldi again now. They're marketing people. Have you experienced? Have you seen any of that?
Yeah.
The whole Colin versus Cuthbert, the caterpillar thing. Oh, Alan, it's so up your street. You would absolutely love it. They must win every award going in the marketing and social media industry, because they are irreverent, naughty, cheeky, funny, but they get away with it, and they've got public support, the swell of public support around this. Been absolutely brilliant, actually. But yeah, I get you, actually. You see quite clearly who's doing their own stuff and who's kind of, and it's coming from the heart, and it might be kind of no frills. Simon Sinek, I think, he does his own on LinkedIn. There's nothing fancy about it at all, unless he's doing an event. But I know it's him, and so I hang on every word because I know it's him.
Yeah,
it's genuinely him. Yeah.
What about you, Lisa? You asked me the question about if I could change one thing in my personal working life.
Oh yeah. This is something that I've wanted for a long time, and who knows whether we'll see it. I would like teleportation, because it would be fantastic if I just get to London like that, or America like that. I could come and see you. I could go and see Lance in America. I'd go and see PJ.
Yeah.
And yet I've not got, a day of traveling on trains that are late and make me feel unwell, all of that kind of thing. I'm not a good traveler.
Do you know lovely flashbacks that ValuesJam creates? You've just given me one with so when I was at school, about to go to university, my mum asked me what I would like to take as a kind of leaving present to go to university with, and I was a Doctor Who fan, so she knit me the long multicolored Doctor Who scarf that you wrap round however many times. So you've just reminded me of that, and that's so I haven't thought about that for so long, but it's a very fond memory.
Well, I look forward to seeing you wear that on one of our future Zooms.
I don't know where it is. I don't.
Something so precious. Surely it's.
I know.
It's somewhere. Goodness me. Wow. Yeah. So, yeah, teleportation and cloning.
Yeah, we haven't been held back with our imagination, have we?
No. Well, I mean, seriously, when we were younger, could you imagine your horror at having a video call? People being able to see you where you were. We do it all the time. We're doing it right. Right now.
Yeah.
And hologram calling will become the norm, won't it?
Yeah.
So you'll be standing next to the flip chart in my office.
Yeah.
Which will be a bit weird at first, won't it? And we'll get, you'll glitch a bit.
Less than I do now.
But we'll get used to it. And then, I wonder whether we'll see these things. It would be.
I can't remember who this is, but somebody said that if you can imagine it, it is possible. It's just a question of how long it's going to take. And that's about video calling. If you'd said to somebody that's, 2 generations ago that would be a reality, they would kind of laugh you off the room.
Yeah. Bit like, watching television in the bath.
Yeah.
or whatever,
This is too much information.
Too much information. Absolutely too much information. So, Alan, what are you encouraged to do differently about innovation as a result of our conversation?
Well, I hope this qualifies, but I'm going to go to Aldi.
Ah, lovely. Okay, and may I also suggest that you follow them on Twitter? I presume they're on Twitter. They're on Facebook, but they're very, very much fun. I think you'll enjoy them a lot.
Yeah, so that's a very simple, straightforward one that's jumped out at me straight away.
Yeah. for me, I am most definitely going to really give close thoughts to the customer experience when I am designing or planning something, because I want to really consider the kind of the customer experience here. I'm going to do that really consciously. I think I do it, but I am going to consciously do it with this frame of reference in mind, actually.
Yeah, and I guess it's the years and years that I spent in the hospitality sector, but whenever I do anything, I'm always thinking, even to the extent of when somebody opens that envelope, what is the experience? And then the box inside, open the lid, what is the experience? And unless you think like that, I think there's a risk that you fall into just being blind to it completely.
You do. And you know how we also say that there are kind of no such thing as coincidences. Well, before we started this Values Jam, I shared with you that, maybe it was yesterday, you and I both received gifts, unexpected gifts over the holidays, which were a really nice thing. And one of them, we didn't know who had sent it, sadly, but we do now. And we're going to be able to say thank you. And the second one is I received a gift, but it was damaged, badly damaged in the post. The person who had arranged for that to be sent out contacted me this morning while we've been on the call and in the break. And she was asking, did you receive it?
Okay.
Because I paid somebody to send 150 of these out.
Okay.
And I went, and she'd only received 2 text messages to acknowledge them.
Wow.
And so I voice noted her and said, thank you very much for thinking of me, but I need to let you know it was quite badly damaged. And I wouldn't want you to be unaware of that for the future. And she's really grateful.
And she's going to go and innovate now for next year.
Oh, she most definitely is. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for a wonderful Values Jam about innovation. It's kind of, they never fail. They never,
No.
even though we have probably reasonably high expectations now.
It's absolutely true. And we go all around the world, don't we? We start off in the pharmaceutical or the hospitality industry, end up in supermarkets, post offices, banks, and dress shopping.
Yeah. Not to mention cloning and teleporting.
Exactly. Look forward to the next one.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.